Hello, thank you all for joining us. A couple of cool new faces to join Sahana during her end of year presentation. She's going to go over her sophomore year. We do ask at the end of the presentation, you allow the staff in the room to ask any questions or offer any commentary, and then we'll open it up to you all to also praise Sahana too. So with that, Sahana, the floor is yours.
Thank you all so much for being here today. So as you all know, my name is Sahana. I am in my second year and I am majoring in neuroscience with a minor in civic engagement. My goal is to apply to medical school and be a physician. So with that said, there's a few things I'd like to go over today, one of which is what I did last summer, and then the 3 pillars that I think really embody top scholar, as well as some lessons that I learned, and then my plans for the future and summer. So to start off, this last summer, I had the opportunity to travel to Northern Ireland to take part in the Nurturing Hope program. So this was a 2-week-long peacemaking and reconciliation program. And basically what we did was we approached conflict from a very individualized perspective. And we had like a group of so many people from all over the world and all sorts of ages and backgrounds. And they got to talk about not just, a lot of people when they think Northern Ireland, they think the Troubles, but I learned that conflicts aren't just that period of history that we might be used to seeing in like a textbook or when we learn about them, but there's so much more to them and they affect people on a very individual level. And so to connect this to my own professional goals, I think it helped me realize how important social support is in fostering both mental and physical well-being. It has a huge impact. And then also how policy and, global interactions play out in different spaces and how the impact that has on people's well-being and the support systems that they're able to find. And I think you'll see that it kind of finds its way into a lot of different things that I've done throughout the year, even though it might not really seem like it has a connection. So changing gears a little bit, I'd like to move on to the first pillar, which is knowledge. And I think one of the biggest ways that this showed up for me throughout this year was in the lab that I work in. So I've been in the Flanagan lab for about 2 years now at UT Health. And I got to work on 2 projects this year, one of which was the NUN study. So this is a longitudinal Alzheimer's study that's been going on for about 30-40 years now. And we've taken insights about how optimism and approaches to life and religion can really affect the impact of like onset of dementia and things like that. And then another project that I got to work on was about the usage of digital pathology and AI softwares in Alzheimer's research. So I'm not a very techie person. I knew nothing about like AI beyond ChatGPT when I started this project, and I had no coding experience. So this was definitely like a big learning experience for me. I learned a lot about how to code, a little more about bench work and wet lab research. And so there were moments throughout my research where I was like, am I doing enough? It doesn't feel like I'm still learning these things. So am I actually contributing to the study in any way? But I am happy to share that I got published twice this past year. One in February with the NUN study. So some of my findings related to the archives I got to write about and see that published. And then another one, literally yesterday I got the notification, but about the usage of AI softwares and digital pathology and how we can, advocate for a little more transparency with these companies. So for me, that was just really like a proud moment, like, what I am doing does matter and it has its impacts. And I was able to present these projects at a few different conferences. One was the Texas Alzheimer's Research Conference. And I've talked about the NUN study there, and that was really fun because the NUN study is like, it's kind of iconic in the Alzheimer's research field. And so when you're talking to a bunch of people who have expertise on that field, they're going to be really excited about it. So that was really nice. And then for the project related to AI software usage in research, I presented that at a few different undergraduate research conferences and then also UTSA Research Week. I think this is a really good opportunity because I was able to learn how to find confidence when I'm presenting my work. And then also being able to present to an audience that literally has no experience in the field as well was a good skill that I got from this. So moving on to some more knowledge and some courses that I got to take this year. Sorry if you don't like brains, I should have put a warning, but I did take organic chemistry this year. I'm taking 2 right now. And the reason I put that on here is because it really made me revisit some of, my study style and like my discipline, my ability to lock in basically. And then I also put neurobiology on here because I kind of had like a mid-semester crisis when I was taking that course. I realized that I didn't like electrophysiology and I didn't like computational neuroscience, which are pretty big fields in neuroscience. But then as I went through the course, I also realized, I really like memory, I like cognition, I like learning about anatomy and the senses. And so for me, that made me realize there's parts of the field that I'm not super inclined to, but there's other parts that I really, really love learning about. I also took 2 professional development courses this year. One was Anatomy of the Future Doctor with Dr. Eddie Hernandez. And I'm not actually applying to medical school until next year, but I think this was still very insightful because it helped me understand things from an admissions point of view, what they look for when they're choosing students, and how to best present myself by the time I do apply. I also took the Leading Locally course with Dr. Flourier and Dr. Cosman, and that's just been so wonderful. I know like some of the special scholars have been to some of the panels, but my favorite was the public health panel. So we are reading a book and we learn about how San Antonio has grown, especially in the past 20 to 30 years, and the way that local leaders have contributed to different aspects of the city. I really enjoyed the public health panel because not only was I learning about, San Antonio has a really big economic divide and a lot of policy that affects the healthcare people are able to receive, but we also serve such a large portion of South Texas. They rely on us for specialty care and a lot of healthcare. And so I was able to learn more about the impact that we have on a broader scale beyond just our local population. So moving on a little bit, I did get the opportunity to shadow quite a bit this year. There were a few different fields, but mostly like neurology, geriatrics, family medicine, and then also gynecology. This is so fun. I know a lot of people say shadowing, they just feel like they're just standing there, but I actually had a lot of fun. I scrubbed in for the very first time for gynecology. I got to kind of help a little bit with the pelvic exam, which was slightly terrifying, but it was still really fun. And then, the fields are so different from each other, even within medicine, like geriatrics and behavioral neurology, a lot of the patients are on the elderly side, but there's so much difference because with behavioral neurology, it's all about memory and cognition, and you have like motor disorders like Parkinson's and then Alzheimer's. But then with geriatrics, because it's primary care, there's such a wide range of things that they cover, and the doctors kind of have to know like a little bit about everything that's going on in the patient's lives. I also got to take part in a public health competition this year. So I'm not a public health major, but one of my friends asked me if I wanted to, and I was like, sure, because I realized this year that I have some interest in public policy and the impact that national nonprofits, local nonprofits have on social support systems and well-being in communities. And so we focused on the unhoused veteran mental health crisis in San Antonio. And we didn't win anything, but I still think this was such a great learning experience because I was able to connect a little bit of my interest and think about it like in a more tangible manner and something that's affecting my local community and a population I've gotten the opportunity. Moving on to some leadership. Thank you to all my student government friends that are here today, but I started off in student government as like a baby freshman senator. I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't really know what student government was either, but this year I got to serve as the chair of business affairs, which is one of the 3 major committees that we have. And so this covers like so many different things. A lot of it was learning about how to communicate and how to represent the student body because UTSA is such a big school. There's so many different sorts of people and students that we see here. They all have their own concerns, and being able to be like sort of the middle person that's communicating those needs to manage to go around to the different representatives' offices and then also see UTSA alumni doing policy and healthcare policy in those offices. Something else that I got to do was attend the Conference of Student Government Associations. So this was like the international, because we had people from like Mexico and Qatar that were there. But this is really useful because we got to see how student government plays out at different campuses. and how it's not dependent on just the student body, but sometimes like the city that they're located in, you know, for College Station, they're so integrated with their city, and the way we could maybe take from there and modify those things to better cater to our UTSA community. I also stayed with AMSA as a media officer this year, so we designed a lot of merch. We hit our 1,000 followers, what's it called, like landmark in fall last semester. And then I also got to design some merch and stuff. So you see anyone with the AMSA sweatshirts around campus, I'm the one who designed those. Now, moving on to the final pillar, I want to talk about alternative breaks. So this semester, not this semester, last semester, I had the opportunity to lead an alternative break in Corpus Christi. So in my freshman year, I went on an alternative break in New Orleans that had focused a lot on homelessness and the impact that you know, the community and social support systems have on healthcare in New Orleans. And so this year, our focus was homelessness and hunger. So we worked with a lot of local partners, and I think this was very impactful because Corpus Christi itself doesn't really have like a very high rate of homelessness or hunger compared to other regions in South Texas, but they serve a pretty big population because they serve the coastal bend area. And to me, that kind of reminded me of San Antonio because, as I said, we serve so much of South Texas with a lot of our organizations and healthcare systems. So I think there's a lot of, you know, place for reflection, and, you know, just building that community with the people that were on my trip was really wonderful as well. This is just a nativity scene that we made for a children's shelter in Corpus Christi. We were really proud of it. It took us like 7 hours to put together. Moving on to some more service, I think one of the most, everything has been impactful, but especially Tourism Clinic has been really impactful to me because we're providing basic medical service to populations that might not be able to access it, you know, with their insurance and stuff. And so a lot of the people that we serve there are uninsured or they're unhoused. And so to me, I was able to see, you know, the intersection between like how policy plays out and how federal insurance policy might impact people like in such a local level. And I also think this helped me connect a lot of things I learned at Nurturing Hope, because as I mentioned, social support systems have a lot of impact on people's well-being. And at Tourism Clinic, when they start with us, they don't always have the best support system. But to me, being able to be a part of that support system, even if it just starts with like, you know, cleaning a wound for them or making sure they have their medication, a difficult experience, just because even though you go in knowing what the situation is, it's really hard to learn that someone you spent the past few weeks or maybe even months forming friendships and relationships with has passed away. But at the same time, I am really glad that I was able to, you know, contribute to like the activities that they got to do and just enjoy some time that they had while they were in care. I also volunteered with TSSO and Voices quite a bit the past year. They were projects like on all sorts of local organizations and at UTSA. But for me, the biggest takeaway from that was community. I made so many friends, and I feel like bonding with your scholar cohort is always great. So that brings me to some themes and lessons that I feel like I saw a lot throughout this year. One of the major ones for me was actually self-care. I do think I put that kind of on the back burner pretty often throughout the year, but just taking a moment to like calm down and like, you know, process everything that's happening, spend time with people that I love. Another big thing for me was confidence. I think, you know, being a top scholar and then also being like a pre-med, insecurity creeps up on you pretty easily. But it was important to me to like feel confident in the work that I was doing and know, you know, this is something that's important and it matters a lot to me and I enjoy what I'm doing. I also put like side quests here because I think, you know, especially Nurturing Hope, when I came into college, I would have never ever expected that to be something that I had done. But I did do it, and I think it's been very impactful in a lot of things I did after that. And those are lessons that I'll carry forward with me for a very long time. And so I think it's important for me to remember that not everything's linear. Like it's not always going to go the way I want it to, but that might be the best way to go about it. And then finally, I put discipline on here because I did revisit like my study styles a lot throughout the year. I had to change a lot of things and basically lock in a lot, but I do think the results paid off. So moving on to my future plans, this is mostly for summer, but I do unfortunately have to start studying for the MCAT, which is a long, tedious process, but hopefully it goes well. And then I'll be gaining some more clinical experience. I'm going to try to shadow in some other fields, keep volunteering, and then I might be working as a medical assistant if things work out with the clinic I'm in contact with. And then finally, there's another research project that we just started on in my lab that's a little bit related to the AI software usage that I was talking about. And so I'll be working on that throughout the year. So I just wanted to conclude with some fun times, fun pictures. Shout out to all my friends. I do think their support has been super, super vital to everything that I've done. And I'm just so glad that I have such a big support system and such a wonderful group of people I can rely on. But that's all I have. Thank you.
So I had to come up here because I was taking notes, but Sahana, I think you're a good definition of what it means to be a well-rounded scholar. I know that a lot of times, specifically like our pre-med majors, right, are very narrow focus on one avenue, trying to get a good MCAT score, trying to go to medical school. I think you're very intentional about all the opportunities that you are a part of, and I really appreciate that about you, right? There's a social justice thing about you that you're nurturing, and I really love that about you. And so continue doing those avenues because I think it's going to make you a really good physician one day. So yeah. I know that you mentioned you highlighted OChem. I notated here, I was like, you should have highlighted also animal behavior. Because I know how fun, of course, that is for you this semester, so.
Good job. Well done. It was great hearing about all the things you've kind of included throughout the year that you've been here at UTSA, and it's been a joy getting to work with you.
Also, congrats on getting published twice. That's
Good job, Sahana. I'm always amazed when I hear all that you're doing. And I love that you are taking these experiences and helping it, helping to spread that out. And I do want to encourage you, take younger scholars with you. Show them that all that you're doing is possible for them too. And so I know that this next year is going to be just as great for you, but congratulations on a job well done. I have one question for you about your learning to lead or the leading San Antonio. So you mentioned the public health part was the most interesting. If you could even drill down in a specific area, what would you say is an area in San Antonio that we all need to know more about? And if you could share your lesson from that one thing that you learned, what would it be?
Do you mean geographical?
Whether it be geographical or I think topically is how that course was organized, right? So public health or the arts or industry, what lesson from one of those areas would you want to share with your broader student, fellow students?
Well, I think a really common theme I saw across every single chapter in the book was Judge Wolf's ability to reach across the aisle. I know that's a term that's used a lot with policy and politics. But another thing was that during one of the panels, Chief Salazar, he mentioned that even though some of the things he does, he gets opposition from federal and state authority, his goal is to serve the people that elected him in and the constituency that he's supposed to represent. And so I think to me that really showed me, especially for San Antonio, we have so many different districts and different populations here. The people that I want to represent, I really have to know them and I really have to make that my goal. And I think that's a takeaway I could take from any part of the book.
Okay, thanks. From Molly, do you have thoughts or comments for Sahana?
I would just say that we are all thoroughly impressed with you, not only your friends with student government, but as a student body, you represent UTSA so well. And we're eternally grateful for the good, not only vibes you give us in SGA, keep us motivated, but also the student body and making sure that they know that they see someone who can lead and who's a good mentor. So congratulations.
I also wanted to say like big congratulations, like it's just your second year, but you've done so much. And I can tell like in all of your different experiences, you really thoroughly like enjoy like SGA. Like I've seen like your stories, like you're really thriving in these spaces. And I'm very proud of you. Thank you, very excited for you.
A question, which is in the next year, are there any of those side quests that you mentioned that you know you're going to do or you're planning on doing already? Or are there any that you're thinking about doing?
So I'd say probably the biggest one that I wouldn't have expected that I would be doing when I started college or when I was thinking about my career path. I applied to Archer. I haven't gotten my decision yet, but thank you to Christy and George for supporting me so much throughout that process. I don't know if it'll work out, but because I haven't gotten the decision yet, but I do think, you know, while applying to that, I learned a lot about policy. It really encouraged me to step outside of my comfort zone. And so even if that doesn't end up working out, there's some other internships and policy related things that I'd really like to pursue beyond just like, you know, what I'm doing in healthcare next year.
You'll hear soon.
Okay.
That's nice.